I was the rabbi's son in Berkeley, California. That's what I was. I was the rabbi's son. This is how I was introduced. This, I see some people nodding, probably rabbi's children. And you know, Hillel Academy was like a little house in the prairie kind of schoolhouse. I mean, you know, first, second, and third grades, that was 6 of us. And fourth, fifth, and sixth grades, people who went to Berkeley later on, you should know what it used to be like. And you know, when I began to come into like a sense of, or like a desire to know who I was, you know, just around the 6th grade, 7th grade, Hillel Academy ended. And I went to Martin Luther King Junior High, okay, where I was known as the Pope. So I spent my adolescent years going from junior high, where I was the Pope, to shul, where I was the rabbi's son, to 1959 El Dorado, where I was the only Jewish kid on the block, with a little hippie girl my age on the right named Sunshine, and another boy down the block named Brant, who used to call me a liar because I claimed that I fasted, and if you don't eat for 24 hours, you would die. So you must be a liar. And this was my childhood, and high school came. So I really did not want to go to Berkeley High. And the next possibility was a yeshiva. A yeshiva in Santa Clara, 4.5-hour drive from, this is my mind as a teenager, but is that about right, from Berkeley? Like a serious drive from Berkeley. Santa Clara, Kerem Yeshiva. And that was the decision. You know, I kind of wanted to go back to Hillel Academy. Little did I know. So I went to yeshiva. 3 days in, I ran away. I went to a payphone, I stuck coins into a payphone, and I cried and cried and cried. I could barely get words out. I said, I am not going back there. It might have something to do with the fact that all the older Bachrim gathered all the new kids the night before into one of the dorm rooms and learned all the gemaras about shadim with us in the dark. About demons. So that might have something to do with the fact that I ran away. But really what it had to do with was the fact that I was in an environment which could not have been more foreign to me. And here I was, the rabbi's son, going to yeshiva. But I had grown up as the only Orthodox kid in Berkeley, California. Maybe in our shul there were maybe 3 other Shomer Shabbat kids. So my father drove up 4 hours and convinced me to go back, and 2 days later I ran away again. And this time the school had no idea where I was. Nobody could find me. I was hiding in a shopping center on the other side of the freeway. I had walked 3 miles to cross and go. And finally I went to a payphone and called, and I said, I'm not going back. And my father drove up again 4 hours, and he said, listen, if you want to go to Berkeley High, we'll send you to Berkeley High, but just stick it out until Bein Hazmanim. Okay, so this was Wintersman. Sukkot was on the horizon. Stick it out to Sukkot. If then you don't want to stay anymore, then you won't stay anymore. Now, when I was at Martin Luther King Junior High, once a week my father would take the teenagers and he would learn Gemara with us. Okay? And when he would learn Gemara with us, this was something which was the first time I had ever learned Gemara. It was the first time I had ever really opened a book of that level of challenge with a couple of my friends. And to me, we may as well have been reading a refrigerator manual in Swahili. Okay? That's the extent to which I was able to connect with this thing called Gemara. And here I was in yeshiva, and this was all we did all morning. And I was so miserable, so disconnected, so lost. 4 days before Bein Hazmanim, a bunch of us were asked to go down to Los Angeles for an NCSY Shabbaton. They wanted to bring yeshiva guys to this NCSY Shabbaton in LA. And I was selected among a group of people because really most of the yeshiva were Bali Tshuva, were sons from Bali Tshuva families, and I was from an Orthodox family. I could lead the song as I could help. So I was chosen to go down to this Shabbaton. And we left for the Shabbaton on Thursday night to drive from Santa Clara to Los Angeles after Mishmar. It was about midnight. After we had finished the Thursday night Mishmar, we piled into a car, and all of us were kids. The driver was a 20-year-old Alter Bacher, one of the older Bachrim who was a student. There was no staff, and we were packed into this 8-seater van, and we set out for LA. And we were driving, and about 15 minutes into the drive, one of the guys put a cassette tape into, it wasn't 8-track, I wasn't not that old, but put a cassette tape into the tape player, and it was Elton John's greatest hits. Now I had never listened to Elton John, okay? I listened to the Beatles, everybody listened to the Beatles, but really what kind of my musical process was from Grease to Saturday Night Fever, and I had a silk shirt, which I bought for summer camp, at the disco at summer camp. I had a silk shirt. And by the time I was in junior high, and this will tell you something about my spiritual and mental state at the time, I was listening to Devo and The Clash. Okay? Yeah. So we're in this van, and we're driving down, and all of a sudden I'm hearing this song which I've never heard before. It's Rocket Man. And I'm looking around in this van, and it's just kids or students. And like I'm looking out the window at the stars. And I begin to get this feeling inside, like I'm flying. The music was unbelievable. And after Rocket Man, which, I mean, it's a song about alienation, but what I heard was the Rocket Man, and then Goodbye Yellow Brick Road, and I started to cry. But it was a different kind of crying. I felt alive. I felt free. It was the first time I was on the road without an adult, without somebody defining me, and it was just like us out to do something. So we got to LA, we got to the Shabbaton. That's a whole other story. I mean, we slept at the Chabad Yeshiva. Talk about culture shock. We slept at the Chabad Yeshiva, and it was my first time at the mikvah. And nobody prepared me, like, we're going to the mikvah. Another story. But we came back from the Shabbaton, and I had made a friend, and this friend next to me became my chavruta. And we sat down and we started to learn Gemara. And I was enjoying it. I was actually loving it. And a little while later, we ran away again. And they were looking for us high and low in the yeshiva. They're going crazy. And eventually we were found. We had run away to the basement of one of the balabatim. We went to one of the balabatim, one of the family members of the yeshiva, and we said, can we learn, people are bothering us too much, can we learn in your basement? We sat there for a day and a half because we didn't want to do anything but learn Gemara. And that's when I realized, that's not true, it's not when I realized. When I was thinking of this story, just a short while ago is when I realized that something changed in that ride. That there was something that I had found in myself. What I realized was that in order for the Gemara to come alive, I had to come alive.